Chapter 8. Melody went over in her mind about what Brent had offered. Imagine his parents taking her baby and raising it? I don't think so. But on the other hand, it was kind of them to consider it. I guess Brent must have really struggled with the pregnancy to go and tell his parents about it. Melody was looking at the calendar on the wall in the kitchen. My period was due yesterday. That's funny. I'm always so regular. A frown crossed her brow as she considered something. I've been giving in to having sex with Richard lately so that things can get back to normal. You don't think... No, that would be too soon. I mean, it's just 2 months since the abortion. I'll probably have my period tomorrow. But there was no change the next day, or the next, or the next. So after a whole week of waiting for her period, Melody decided she would have to take another pregnancy test. This time I'm not going to see my own doctor, she told herself. I'm going to do it myself. So she grabbed a parka from the book and the hook behind the entrance door and headed out for a walk. It was a nice winter day, crisp and sunny, just the kind Melody liked. She breathed in the fresh, cold air as she walked briskly down to the corner drugstore. A little bell rang above her head as she walked in. Debbie, the pharmacist assistant, was doing the till and welcomed her. Hi, Melody. Is there something I can help you with today? Melody knew her from church, and she really didn't want to confide in her, but she had no choice. Well, it's a personal matter, Debbie. I would like to buy a home pregnancy test. Debbie hid her surprise and said, Oh, of course. They're right on aisle 2 in the middle section. Melody walked to aisle 2 and found the section. Boy, there were quite a few to choose from. They all seemed to be about the same price. Reading the labels didn't seem to help, so she chose a couple and took them to the counter. What's the difference between these two? She asked Debbie. Not much, really, just different companies. They work within a couple of minutes to detect the pregnancy hormone. Debbie answered her question. Okay, I'll take that one. Melody opened her purse and looked for her wallet. Debbie just couldn't help herself. You and Richard must be so excited about the possibility. Melody didn't comment, but a pink flush was coming up her cheeks. There were other people in the store, and she just wanted to get out of there. Debbie realized that she had overstepped herself and whispered, Don't worry, I'll keep it to myself. That night, while Richard was watching TV downstairs, Melody went up quietly and read the instructions on the package of the pregnancy test. I just need a small urine sample, she said to herself. After using a small paper cup, Melody opened the pink and white box and took out the test strip and instructions. She carefully dipped the strip into the yellow liquid and watched until it was soaked. Then she put it on top of the cup to see what it would show. Nothing yet. The instructions said it could take 3 minutes, and if it was positive, there would be a plus sign come up. If it was negative, a minus sign would show. Sweat began to break out in little droplets on her forehead. She was concentrating so hard that she hadn't heard Richard coming up the stairs. Hey, what are you doing there? He spoke behind her back. What? Melody whipped around with a scream of surprise. In so doing, the little cup of urine went flying off the bathroom counter. Oh, what a mess, Melody cried. You shouldn't creep up on a person like that, Richard. Well, I was wondering where you were and what you're doing, because things were so quiet. What's in the cup? He inquired. Melody had stooped down to pick things up and grabbed some toilet paper to wipe up the mess. It was then that she saw it. The test strip had moved too. There was a big blue plus sign on it. Melody's expression registered shock. Richard looked down to see what she was doing and what she was looking at. He saw the test strip and the packaging, and he realized what she'd been doing. You took a home pregnancy test, Melody? Uh-huh. Melody nodded her head as her eyes began to well up with tears. Does this plus sign mean it's positive? Richard was looking over her shoulder at the little strip of paper. Yeah, that's what it means. Melody turned to see Richard's face. His eyes were big. Then he stretched out his arms and put them around Melody's shoulders. "You're pregnant, honey? We're going to have a baby of our own?" Melody couldn't say anything. She just began to cry. Unknown to Melody, Richard and a black shadow was hiding behind the shower curtain in the bathroom. Ronan had been listening with his big pointed ears that looked like two sharp knives jutting up the sides of his black crippled face. Ronan was a minor demon that had been assigned to keep an eye on Melody since the great success of her abortion. Lord Dark had been delighted to hear about the terrible suffering of the tiny baby growing in Melody's womb just before it was ripped from safety to lose its wee life. Of course, there'd be a party to congratulate the group of demons who had personally worked through all the details of planning Melody's temptation to the affair in the first place. The plan was that all of this would destroy Melody and Richard's marriage, then further spill over to harm their families with divorce, pain, and suffering, to especially ruin any Christian reputations, and so on and so on. Ronan had been trying to get the message to his superiors that Melody and Richard seemed to be patching up their relationship. He was worried, but they hadn't paid him any attention, still gloating about their big reward from Lord Dark, namely new titles and moving up the demonic ranks. Now he would have to fly over and tell them that Melody was pregnant again. This time it looked like the father was her husband. Terrible news that he just knew would land him numerous blows and painful spikes as they retaliated their anger all over his lumpy head. "Oh, no, 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 I don't want to go," Ronan whimpered disparagingly to himself. He knew he had no choice, so he gathered up his leathery wings and fluttered out the bathroom window on his way. The Prince of the Air, Lord Dark, was sitting regally on one of his thrones carved from the bones of many an adversary. It was overlaid with rich satiny robes of red and black. In this realm things could change in an instant at the desire of Lord Dark. Huge black clouds billowed majestically behind him, creating a backdrop of immense power, which was designed to threaten anyone witnessing the scene. Before him throngs of worshipping demons bowed and prostrated themselves, raising a dirge of evil blessing that sounded like a multitudinous din in Ronan's ears. He had just arrived at the outer edge of the space and was inching his way forward fearfully when suddenly he felt the skin of his neck being grabbed in a powerful fist. Hadra picked up his puny body, lifting him up into the air like a fly. "What do you think you're doing here, puke face?" he spewed. "You're supposed to be on the job with that pitiful little blonde woman, making her life pure hell." I have to tell the master some terrible news." Ronan spit the words out along with flecks of foam from his dry mouth. "What terrible news?" Hadra's yellow eyes narrowed menacingly as his grip tightened painfully on the lesser demon's hide. The blonde woman, well, she's, pregnant." Ronan tried to cover his face with his bony fingers, just as Hadra's big claws began to rake against it. "Pregnant?" The demon's face contorted in rage. "What do you mean, pregnant?" The loud din of tinny worship began to fade as those who'd heard the news turned their yellow, bulging eyes in their direction. Then an icy silence crept along the air. Lord Dark began to rise from his throne. Extending one long arm with a pointed jeweled finger, Lord Dark spoke. "You, come here." Hadra fell to his knees, still holding Ronan in one hand, and began to crawl towards the front of the space. "Now!" Lord Dark bellowed, and with his voice the two little demons were catapulted forward like two little black beans hitting the floor in front of the master. "What did you say?" Lord Dark commanded. Hadra's eyebrows were glued to the top of his face as sweat began to pour off his wiry scalp. He said softly, "Lord Dark, Master Dark, one of my minor demons has just arrived with word that Melody Wolf, the little blonde woman, may be expecting again." He finished lamely. Lord Dark inhaled loudly. You mean the woman who recently aborted, whose marriage is destroyed, and whose family is being corrupted? Lord Dark was seething through his blood-red lips. Hadra nodded as Ronan tried to curl up into as small a ball as possible. If only he could just vanish, he thought woefully. Who else was on that mission? Lord Dark asked. Hadra began to list the names. Gosma, Malo, Freya, Jalus, Rogila. As the names rolled off his tongue, each one of the demons' names swiftly moved up to form a line in front of their master and kneel with eyes downcast. The entire company of demon worshippers was shaking in their boots too, knowing that it was only a matter of time until... A golden glint reflected on the chest of the last demon mentioned. Regila, the demon of religiosity. Lord Dark noticed it, as he had recently honored this unholy bunch with new titles and recognition. You have all failed, Lord Dark declared. Failed in your mission to destroy one little blonde woman and her family. These Christians, the words tasted like sour lemon juice in his mouth, are a menace to my kingdom. Their God has surely circumvented our plan and allowed another one of their race to be conceived. This time it is the legitimate heir, the child of promise to their family, he shrieked. You must all be punished for your failure. As he said the terrible words, his arm supernaturally extended. One long nail on his right jeweled index finger began to scrape along the chest of each demon. The golden metal which had so recently indicated new rank and title cut through to the demon's body. Thick rivulets of molten red liquid began to pour out of the hole, and each demon began to scream unrelentingly. They were unable to contain their horrendous pain. Their cries had no effect for any hint of mercy from Lord Dark. The sound was so horrible and so loud that Cryop covered his ears and pressed himself against the far wall in an effort to drown it out. Joseph noticed a large red cloud ascending from an area of space above the earth as he was coming down to attend to his charge. Looks like the demon realm was having a big blow-up, he smiled to himself. Look over there, David. Joseph indicated to his companion angel to take a look. Exuding a whistle of joy, David, the angel of comfort, smiled broadly. I guess the message of the new conception has reached the enemy camp. All hell is breaking loose. Let's get down to protect our two charges, Joseph said, as the two angels swooped through the realms and materialized in the little apartment on Elm Street. Melody was sitting in a rocking chair in the living room of her home, with her hands across her womb area. She had a dazed expression on her face. She had no idea that she was being watched by the two angelic protectors. I can't believe I'm really pregnant again, she was thinking to herself. This baby is Richard's, there's no doubt. But this child will be born in the same year as the one that I aborted just 2 months ago. I don't know how I can get through this pregnancy. I don't know why you would allow me to be a mother, God. Just then the telephone rang. Melody picked it up absent-mindedly. Hello, she said. Hi, Melody. Oh, no, she knew that voice. Brent had mustered all of his courage to make this call to her. Hey, I was really worried about you since the last time we talked. I've been feeling really bad about what you've gone through, and Brent, Melody found her voice. I don't think you should call me anymore. Why not? I still care about you, Melody. He sounded hurt. Melody took a deep breath. I'm pregnant again, Brent. This time the baby is Richard's. There was dead silence on the line. Melody didn't say any more. She just let the air hang heavy between them. Finally, Brent said, All right, Melody, you take care of yourself. Goodbye. He hung up the phone carefully, hung his head, and walked out of the phone booth with his hands in his pockets. Melody hung up the phone too. She had been playing the LP Bad Girls by Donna Summers. The lyrics were getting to her. She turned off the record player. She noticed her old Bible lying on the shelf above it. It had been a while since she'd done any regular devotional reading. Taking the book, she sat back down on the rocker and opened the worn leather cover. The book just seemed to open itself to a page in Ephesians. It read, "Bad friends, bad company. Some of you shouldn't even call yourselves Christians." A tear began to form in the corner of her eyes as the sword of the Spirit pierced through the tough outer wall of Melody's heart. David was doing the work, and his gleaming gold sword cut right through to the heart of the matter, exposing the darkness in her soul to the light of truth. "Yeah, I never should have let myself get involved with another man, Lord," Melody began to admit her sin of adultery. "Why did I ever let the affair happen? Why did I hurt Richard so much, and even myself? I broke so many of your commandments, God, especially the one, 'Thou shalt not commit murder.' I even destroyed my own child." Melody began to sob openly. Her shoulders shook uncontrollably. She felt as though her heart was smashed into a million little pieces. Christian took a swimmer's stroke to the edge of the warm pool of amniotic fluid. He was just 3/4 of an inch long, and his tiny body could do a swimmer's stroke around the sack once a second. He thought he heard something outside. He felt some sadness enter his little mind. "Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Mummy's going to love you by and by." Oh, he knew that wonderful voice. Abba was singing to him again. Christian felt peace and security envelope him like a warm blanket. Richard was humming a tune as he beat the rivets into the fuselage with his screwdriver. Willie was supporting the other side of the metal, and it was only on the off second, when the whirring sound quit intermittently, that he caught wind of Richard's tune. "Hey, buddy, how come you're so happy?" Willie asked his co-worker when they finished. "Well, I had some great news last week, friend," Richard smiled. "Yeah? What news?" Willie pressed. "Melody and me," he paused for effect. "We're going to have a baby," Richard announced proudly. "Really? I thought your wife had miscarried a while ago," Willie said. "Oh, yes, she did, but now she's conceived again." Richard had forgotten that he had ever shared anything about the first pregnancy with anyone. That was before he knew. He stopped his thoughts. "I don't want to think about that anymore." "Do you think the pregnancy will be safe this time?" Willie continued. "You better make sure she takes good care of herself. You know, my Marge had 2 miscarriages. It seems to run in her family. It hit us pretty hard." "We'll go see our doctor then, and make sure we do things by the book this time." Richard was talking as much to himself as he was to his friend. They were sitting in the waiting room of the doctor's office. "I really don't want to see Dr. Belmont," Melody repeated. "It's too soon, Richard. He's going to think I'm absolutely crazy for getting pregnant." She couldn't say what she really wanted to, which was, "Don't you realize he's the one who performed the abortion on me? I don't want to see him again, ever." "Now, Melody, you have to take real good care of yourself. You need to see the doctor to confirm the pregnancy," Richard comforted. "I know I'm pregnant," Melody insisted. "You've seen me throwing up that bitter yellow bile every morning when I brush my teeth." Yes, Richard remembered that gross stuff. "But you have to see a doctor sometime." Just then a nurse came into the doorway. "Mrs. Wolfe?" She glanced up from her file while Melody and Richard stood up. "Right this way, please." Her heels clicked loudly on the linoleum tiles as the couple tried to match her pace. Then she was sitting down in that familiar, now unpleasant office. Melody had a memory of her hands wringing a tattered, tear-stained Kleenex. She put that wall up around her mind again and pushed the unpleasant picture away. Finally, Dr. Belmont walked in. "Mr. and Mrs. Wolfe, what brings you here today?" he said pleasantly. "My wife is expecting, Doctor," Richard replied to his question. The doctor's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Are you sure, Melody? He looked right at her. She nodded her head, but she wouldn't look directly into his eyes. I did a home pregnancy test twice. And she's been having morning sickness for 2 weeks, Richard added. Well, this is a surprise. How do you feel being pregnant, Melody? Dr. Belmont kept himself from saying the word again. We're just thrilled about it, Richard spoke for her. Melody kept looking down. How are you feeling, generally? The doctor pressed. Okay, I guess. Well, let's get you into an examination gown, young lady. I'll have to make sure about this news. Here's the gown. Just open the door slightly when you're ready. Why don't you come into the next office with me, Richard? Dr. Belmont indicated the door on the right wall. Richard followed him reluctantly, wondering why he had to leave the room. I'm sure you're wondering why I called you into my private office, Richard, Dr. Belmont said. I feel it's important for you to hear from me about some of the post-abortion symptoms that could affect your wife. Now, I know this is a delicate situation, and perhaps you're not really up to discuss it, but as your doctor, I believe it is important that you realize that it is just too early for your wife to be pregnant again. Richard could feel the blood rising in his neck. What are you saying, doctor? I'm saying that Melody may not have worked through her emotional issues concerning the recent surgery. Her body is still healing. There's a greater risk of miscarriage now. Now, don't think that I'm suggesting she terminate this pregnancy. I just wanted to forewarn you, Richard, that your wife's mental and physical condition is delicate at this stage. You should be prepared in case the pregnancy does not go to term. Oh, Richard looked down with a heavy heart. I thought this would help us as a couple. We really did want children one day. The doctor came over and placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. I know, life can be hard. Just then a nurse opened the door. Doctor, your patient has been ready for some time, she chided. Oh yes, I'm coming. With that he went out of the office and into the next room, closing the door behind him. Melody didn't appreciate the examination. She could hardly stand being in the same room as Dr. Belmont, let alone be touched by him. Maybe it was because it reminded her about what had happened just a couple of months ago. Or perhaps it was because she somehow blamed him, too, for being the one who had performed the abortion. She was still dealing with angry feelings towards Richard because he had said she had to choose between him and the baby. Well, she had chosen all right. She had chosen to put up a big wall around her emotions, and she just didn't want to think about it any more. Here she was pregnant again, and she was really going to have a baby this time. A baby. In a half year or so. Somehow 6 months didn't seem like a very long time to get used to the idea. The other day Melody read her Bible for the first time in a while. She had broken down as she read about how she shouldn't even call herself a Christian because of who she chose to be with. Somehow admitting to her part of the problem began to make her feel a bit better. She had been raised in a Christian home from birth, attended Sunday school all her childhood years. It wasn't as though she was ignorant about what was right and wrong. She had decided to convert to Christianity as a young girl of 11 years. She then understood the plan of salvation was that she had to repent of all her sins and ask Jesus Christ to come into her heart and be the Lord of her life. Yet in spite of all that, she had gone and done what she did. I didn't ask you to be perfect. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. I just asked you to let me be Lord. She couldn't believe he was speaking to her through her thoughts like that. God, do you still love me? Melody began to sob. I've never stopped loving you, his voice responded gently. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me? Melody was speaking her thoughts aloud in the room now. Joseph was standing right beside her. His beautiful white wings were glowing with God's glorious love. Father spoke lovingly into the soul of his daughter. Melody, I forgive you, daughter. Now go and sin no more. Where had she heard those words before? His voice ended in her heart. Melody felt a sensation like warm water washing over her mind. The healing tears continued to flow down her cheeks. Laying her hands across her abdomen, just under her belly button, she whispered, "Baby, I love you."